So we ended basically with chapter 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6 are going to go through the kind of theological portions of the ark from a biblical and historical Jewish perspective. Because remember, Dr. Cho was not remember, but I'm not sure what his degree was in theology, but I know that he had quite an extensive history with theology before and during his time as a music theorist. So, anyways, this is going to be part 2 of the replica of the Ark of the Covenant in Japan, the mystery of Mifune Shiro. And I'm just going to jump into chapter 7 and read a little bit here and give you an idea of kind of what he's talking about, because this is where it starts to get very interesting. And so, the etymology of the Ark and Mifune Shiro. So, etymology, for those that are not familiar with it, is basically tracing the roots and the origins of words. And it'll give you much kind of more depth in the definition, as it were. But most of the time, when I look up a word, I'll look up the etymological background of it, not just the definition, and because I really want to understand that kind of thing. So, anyways, he says the word ark is familiar to the people of Christian, Judaic, and Muslim faiths, famously associated with Noah's Ark, as well as the ark in which infant Moses was hidden and let afloat on the Nile River to escape the Pharaoh's soldiers on forced reduction of the Israeli population in Egypt. The word is equally familiar to many as the Ark of the Covenant. Perhaps it is made a bit more famous by the Spielberg movie, The Raiders of the Lost Ark. However, an obvious question that begs to be answered is, why was the same word ark used to refer both to a square chest of a container and a boat? The English word ark means a boat, and hence a large boat or ship in which Noah was commanded to build to save his family and a pair of every living creature, as rightly called Noah's Ark. The same English word and the same Hebrew word were also used in reference to Moses' ark, the small basket that functioned as a flotation device that Moses' mother had made to save her infant son. It would be peculiar then that the Ark of the Covenant was called an ark, at least in English, at least in the English Bible, when it is obvious that it was never used as a flotation vehicle, as was the case with Noah's Ark and Moses' Ark. It is therefore necessary in the context of the study to inquire into the etymology of the word ark in providing an important understanding of the historical and cultural lineage of the Ark of the Covenant. First, two different Hebrew words were used in the Bible for ark. One is teba, that's pronounced with an accented elongated e, tiba, tiba. And the other is Aaron, and a glottal a in similar accented long achan, I guess. The tiba is believed to be a loan word from Egypt. Also, see below in the Hancock quotation, which means a box or even a coffin. See below. There's nothing below, by the way. While an Aaron is Aron, not a loan word, but a Hebrew word proper, which also means box and even ordinary chest. And Aaron is an older word in Hebrew history used earlier than Tiba in the Pentateuch in the first 5 books of the Old Testament, traditionally believed to have been written by Moses. It first appearing in Genesis 50, chapter 50, verse 26, where it is stated that when Joseph died in Egypt at an old age of 110, they embalmed him, and he was put into a coffin, an Aaron, in Egypt. However, a different word, Tiba, is used for both Noah's Ark and Moses' Ark. From this use of the two different words for outwardly two different shaped articles of dissimilar functions, it is not difficult to conclude that Aaron is meant to refer to a chest or receptacle, and while Teba is a container that is used for a flotation device. Thus, we understand why Aaron, instead of Teba, was used for the ark, the chest of the covenant. This use of interchanged or interchanging meaning of the two words is further confirmed in 2 Kings chapter 12, verses 9 and 10 and 16, where it is stated that a chest, a Teba, instead of an Aaron, was placed at the right-hand side of the altar at the temple's entrance, for the purpose of collecting the contributions toward the restoration of the temple, which had somehow fallen into a state of disrepair. It may be added Also, that a compared to the tiba, which is referred to as an ordinary receptacle in Aaron, was used for a receptacle of articles of religious or ritual significance, such as the remains of Joseph, the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments written on them, and still later the urn containing the portion of manna or Aaron's rod. Hence, the Ark of the Covenant was not a mere chest or receptacle. It was, in fact, the receptacle of a considerable divine dignity as well as the throne par excellence of the Lord. In short, this ark was a holy and living article, virtual God in bodily form. To wit, when the ark was lifted to begin a journey, the people would cry out, "Arise, Yahweh, let thine enemies be scattered, let them that hate thee flee from them before thee." Similarly, which is an ark to come to rest, the people would cry out, "Return, O Yahweh, to the myriads of the families of Israel." This is from Numbers chapter 10, verses 33 to 36. Indeed, the Ark of the Covenant frequently displayed unspeakable awesome power. This is most vividly demonstrated by destroying the enemies of the Israelites, or anyone showing the slightest degree of disrespect unintentionally or otherwise. A vivid example of the latter is told about Uzzah, one of Abinadab's sons, who was serving in the court of the guard of the ark when it transported from their hillside homestead to Jerusalem. Uzzah extended his hands to steady the ark when he saw it was faltering due to the cart faltering caused by a stumbling of the oxen pulling the cart. The poor soul was immediately struck dead because of his actions of impious touching the ark, or impious. Um, Even if his intention was admirable, and this is from 2 Samuel 6, chapter 6, verse 68. But then, why was the Ark of the Covenant essentially a chest or a box with no express purpose or likeness of a ship called an ark? Here, we must again turn to the most fascinating insights offered by Graham Hancock, that there was a cultural and etymological link between Aaron, the chest, the ark, and Tiba, the boat, also the ark. In other words, the same translated word ark to mean both chest and boat is not appropriate or mistaken, but indeed has a unique etymological basis. In order to show this etymological connection, it is necessary to cite a rather lengthy passage from Hancock's work in order to clarify the double meaning the word ark is used in the Bible. And people love to hate on Graham Hancock, but I mean, what can I say? I can't believe Dr. Cho actually quoting the guy. So this is from Hancock's, when he was like trying to track down the Ark back in Ethiopia or something like that. This is what he says, quote, "Studying the western wall of the colonnade of which Tutankhamun reliefs were displayed, my eye was caught by what appeared to be an ark, lifted shoulder high on its carrying poles by a group of priests, with the sole proviso that the object being transported took the form of a miniature boat rather than a casket. The scene looked like a faithful illustration of the passage in the book of Chronicles describing the Levites carrying off the Ark of God with shafts on their shoulders. In the Timkat, the Ethiopian festival of the Ark of the Covenant, or a festival of the Ark of Worship, which Hancock had witnessed, the details of the ceremonies with religious frenzy, which was identical to the ecstatic procession portrayed on the time-worn stones of the Egyptian temple of Tutankhamun. Timkat had been characterized by the performance of wild dances, the playing of musical instruments before the arks. Ellipsis. According to established etymologies, the original meaning of tabot, or tabit, the ark, had been a ship-like container. Indeed, the archaic Hebrew word tiba, from which the Ethiopian term had been derived, had been used in the Bible to refer specifically to ship-like arks, namely the Ark of Noah and the Ark of bulrushes, in which the infant Moses had been cast adrift on the Nile. And it is a significance of the Keber Nagast, the ancient Ethiopian text of history, had at one point described the Ark of the Covenant as a belly of a ship containing the two tablets which were written by the finger of God. In an 1884 book by A.H. Sayce, then a deputy professor of philology at Oxford University, titled Fresh Light from the Ancient Monuments, it is stated that the law and ritual of the Israelites had been derived from many sources. Amongst these were various festivals and feasts in which the gods were carried in procession in ships, which, as we learn from the sculptures, resembled in form the Hebrew ark and were borne on men's shoulders by means of staves. Hancock then continues that those ceremonies had taken place in Upper Egyptian town known as Luxor, a relatively recent name derived from the Arabic Luxor, meaning the palaces. Much earlier, during the period of Greek influence from about the 5th century BC, the whole area, including the nearby temple at Karnak, had been known as Tiba or Tibai. Thebai, something like that. So it almost looked like Thebes, but in the plural, Thebai. Okay, so modern Europeans had subsequently corrupted this name to a more familiar Thebes. Okay, there we go. In the process, however, they obscured an intriguing etymology. The Thebai had, in fact, been derived from Tapit, the name in which Luxor Karnak religious complex had been known in the era of Tutankhamun and Moses. And Tapit, in its turn, was merely the feminine form of Apit, the great festival for which they had been famous, a festival that centered upon the procession in which the arks had been carried between two temples. What intrigued me about this was the phonetic similarities of the word Tapit and Tabot, which was due to the fact that the shape of the Tapit arcs had evolved over a passing century, gradually ceasing to resemble ships so closely and becoming instead more and more chest-like. I had established that the Ethiopian term Tabot, or Tabit, had been derived from the Hebrew tiba, meaning a ship-like container, which in turn points to the possibility that the word tiba itself had originally been derived from the ancient Egyptian tabit, or tabe, because the ceremonies derived from the Ark of the Covenant had been modeled upon those of the Apper festival. Now, this is where Cho picks up in his own voice. So, to the above, the following perspectives may be also added. So he's going to add in some stuff here. The first is that some liberal scholars, term used by the fundamental theologians to refer to their more academically objective counterpart, are of the opinion that the theological concept associated with the ark was an invention of the Elohists, of the Elohist. The original writers of the source of the material of the Bible have God being referred to as Elohim. So I guess the people who follow Elohim. This is considered to be the more orthodox school of the ancient Hebrew ritualists. These scholars believe that Elohist came, or is it, let's see, the Elohim, it looks like it's a, hold on, let's see. Of the opinion that theological is associated, oh, so it's just the concept associated with ark was an invention of the Elohist. Okay, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me right now. Okay, these scholars believe that the Elohists came into being sometime in the mid-9th century BCE, and that the ark was used principally as a divination box of the priestly caste, i.e., the Levites. It is of their opinion also that when this older Elohist view fell into disrepute under the rise of the newer Hebrew legalism, referred to as Yahwist, in whose writings God was referred to as Yahweh, the personal name of God. The ark was associated with the covenant and the Decalogue in a very close way. And this is Decalogue being the Ten Commandments, or the 10 laws. The above perspective would at least explain the reason why there are conflicting descriptions of the ark. That is, there was the ark made by Bezalel, a Calebite, a priestly caste, to keep the second set of stones with the additional weight of the two solid golden cherubims and their wings outstretched, mounted on a thick solid lid of gold, and together were called the mercy seat. This newly designed ark, with its more sophisticated features, would require 4 men to carry it as opposed to the earlier ark, without the cherubim statues, and hence lighter. This ark, which Moses himself had made for the first set of stone tablets, the one which appeared to have no lid, Deuteronomy chapter 10, 1 through 5, would only require 2 men to shoulder. And we know that from 2 Samuel chapter 15, verse 29. From this and other references mentioned earlier, ark was neither a unique religious vessel, nor was it a particularly Israelite ritual item. Instead, there is every reason to believe that the ark was rather a common item in the Near East, including Egypt, for both religious purposes and ordinary everyday life usage. Perhaps for this reason, too, the word ark for the Ark of the Covenant is never capitalized in all the English Bible. Similarly, an ordinary word for chest is used to refer to the Ark of the Covenant in all the Bibles in the Asian language. This is the Xiang in the Chinese Bible and Hakua in the Japanese Bible. The second is that while Aaron connoted a receptacle for ritualistic historically or religiously important articles, be it the remains of a revered ancestor such as Joseph or the stone tablets bearing the written words of God, Tiba, though used as a common word for an ordinary chest, large or small, was also intimately associated with the more ancient ritual use of a receptacle as a vehicle for transporting sacred articles, such as the soul of a dead pharaoh to the realm of the gods. So he's saying it's much more older than the Israelites' adaptation of it. This connotation apparently had this connotation had apparently come to possess a particular signification in the post-exile period. It is for this reason that the ark was called or translated to mean vessel with which to transport sacred articles and a vehicle in transmitting messages between the terrestrial man and celestial God. Therefore, the use of the English word Ark of the Covenant in the King James Bible and all subsequent English Bible editions corrected by the more recent biblical and archaeological scholars is justified in referring not only to the function of a receptacle, but also, and perhaps more importantly, to the symbolical ship-shaped vessel for transporting sacred relics. Excuse me. This indeed has been observed to be true in all traditions of worship and celebration. Aper, Tiba, Tabo, and the Tabata associated with the Ark of the Covenant. And, as it shall be shown, this is also true with the, here, and this is where it gets really interesting. This is also shown to be true with the Shinto festivals and rituals, particularly with regard to Mifune Shiro. This Mifune Shiro is essentially a rectangular wooden chest, a receptacle, which has been kept for countless generations by the Japanese imperial household, as long as 2 millennia, 2,000 years, deposited inside the Naigu, the inner sanctum, or the Holy of Holies, of the most revered Grand Issa Shrine, the Isadai Jingu of Japan. It is here also that the students of ancient Japanese history and of Shinto heritage would find the etymology of Mifune Shiro puzzling and mystifying, for the word mi is a prefix signifying a thing of divine or imperial nature, while the word fune means boat. So a divine boat. Mifune is a divine sacred boat, I guess. And Shiro refers to an article that is not genuine, but a near representation, a replica of the original. Hence, together, the literal meaning of the Japanese name for this sacred imperial regalia is Shiro Mifune, or replica sacred boat, i.e. replica of the Ark. And that's where I think that this is where this boat really starts to launch off. So I think because it's cold and windy, I'll probably do the next chapter, because this is where he really starts to get into this. And then he brings the Sampo, of all things, into this, which is, I'm not sure where he says it. I'm wondering if the Sampo is related to the Sampo of the Finnish, from the Kalevala myths, where the Sampo was this ark that gave treasures, and it was this, I believe it was with an M though. Anyways, it wouldn't surprise me if that's there's some, and it wouldn't surprise me if they're not related at all. But let me see if there's anything cool in here. I did want to show, here's the picture of the book that he's actually talking about. And this is what fascinated him. So you see this and you look at it and you just think, well, that's just like a Hebrew text, right? Until you open up the inner page and see, one, that it's been censored by the Japanese imperial court at some point in time. And not only that, the actual title of the book, which is backwards, I'll read it in just a second, is called The Origin of Japan in Japanese by Junichiro Oyabe. And he's got a master's and a PhD and was some sort of imperial, he had a real official title and worked for the courts. And this is all before the real big push to get everything Western out. And that's the Star of David on the cover of the book, that basically says the voice of Yahweh, or the voice of God. And so that's what caused this whole thing. So why is an imperial court historian writing a book called The Origin of Japan and the Japanese, but on there is a gold still, has the voice of God in Hebrew? That is funky, and that's why he went down this whole rabbit hole of what happened and how this could possibly happen. And we'll get into some of it. I mean, I'm encouraging people to buy this book and read it and to help Dr. Cho's estate. And but this is just it's utterly fascinating. So I'll pick up tomorrow with something else. Everybody have a really wonderful day. Always bake, sleep each other, and party on.